I have a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions about why certain things are done in this world and what effect they actually have, particularly in an ever-evolving society. And one of those things I have questions about is the justification and motivation behind book bans. So the last few years we've seen a raving increase in book bans, particularly in America. In 2024, PEN America calculated that the US public system banned 10,000 books during that previous academic year, which is almost triple previous year's figures, just to put that into perspective. I've always heard more about book bans in the US, so this is entirely centred around the US. I'm not trying to exclude any others out there. And looking at the banned books, it's pretty easy to see that they have specific targets. A lot of them are books that have discussions about race, but there are also lots about, women's issues and LGBTQ plus issues. And whilst I say this is based on research by the PEN International, there has been open denial about the alleged book bans by the Department of Education, which has forced to cease an investigation into them by order of the current President of the United States, which shows great interest to me that no one wants that to be investigated formally. So according to PEN, Florida has had the highest number of book bans in 2024. It had 4,561 instances of banned books across 33 school districts. And some of the banned books were things like Beloved by Toni Morrison, a classic, people ban that all the time. More unusual was Normal People by Sally Rooney, and then Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, again a classic, is regularly banned. And across the country there were 13 new titles that were added to the list of banned books, such as Alex Haley's Roots, which is a saga of an American family describing the journey of an enslaved person from Africa to the US, and James Baldwin's semi-autobiographical book Go Tell It on a Mountain. Now when we talk about book bans, obviously it's not just public schools which are being affected. In April 2025, the US Army and Air Force libraries were told to remove books and materials that promoted DEI, gender ideology and critical race theory. And this was a countrywide order that was only actually implemented after the Defense Secretary told the US Naval Academy in Maryland to remove any books that promoted DEI, and that resulted in the removal of 400 books from that particular library. So when I was looking into this, The Guardian reported that the books on the Holocaust, on histories of feminism, civil rights and racism, as well as Maya Angelou's I Know Why Cage Birds Sing, were amongst the removed books from these libraries. And I do feel like we need to really state the obvious here, because historically book bans are often an early sign of authoritarianism. Cultural censorship and intellectual suppression have been employed by many famed people, Mussolini, Hitler, the leaders of the Soviet Union, communist China. But what got me thinking was, does that methodology make any sense today? They didn't have the internet, so censoring what people could learn about or have access to served much larger agendas. It did actually keep people in the dark about a lot of topics and prevented people from researching particular topics by destroying research on those topics or having discussions about said topics. And when allowing systems to control the curriculum and dictate what people thought and what they believed in helped tailor a country's people to be exactly how the government would want them to be, and for the government's benefit. If you make the masses stupid and gullible and uneducated and unable to ask questions, then they'll do exactly what they're told to do or what they are told to believe in. And naturally, you can understand that's pretty insidious, it's controlling, evil, quite frankly, manipulative and deeply disrespectful and a hateful practice. But when it comes to having access to the internet, is that still such a major fear? And I think also having access to the internet has diluted people's responses to the recent book bannings in America. Because it seems to be, to most people, that the book banning is more of a symbolic gesture rather than anything that can actually cause them any harm, because they're like, well, I can just go buy the book myself, well, I can just look it up on the internet. But I think that dissonance is where actually it's getting more dangerous, and perhaps people are becoming a little bit too complacent. So let me explain where I think it may actually still work today, even though it doesn't seem like it's viable. But before we need to go any further into the video, I want to take a quick moment to thank today's sponsor, which is Kish. And I'm so excited to be working with Kish because I've actually been using their products for well over a year. Like, beginning of last year is when I finally discovered them. I started using Kitsch because I went much darker with my hair dye, and one of the banes of my life is that sulfates. Sulfates strip colour like no one's business. So when I was on my venture to find a sulfate-free shampoo, I discovered Kitsch. And ironically, the one that I picked up, which I still use to this day, is the rice water protein and the rice water protein conditioner. They've sent me some new ones for this video, and it's so nice to have a fresh packet that I'm just sniffing. I look like a deranged person sniffing. Oh, but it smells so good. I actually have their hair perfume in my hair right now, like a Sugar Crush one, I believe. And it smells like vanilla, and I just keep sniffing my own hair. And Kitsch fits all of my ethical values. It's obviously recyclable, so obviously we're not losing plastic bottles, and then also additionally, obviously you're using bars, so you're not using plastic. Don't mind me, I'm just sniffing. So what I love about Kitsch is they're not only sulfate free, they are also paraben free, silicone free, and phthalate free. Which, trust me, that stuff ruins your hair. And whilst it's there as products, that stuff strips anything from it. If you have colour, it will strip the colour, it will make your hair dry, it won't promote growth, whereas rice water protein in particular helps promote damaged hair follicles, so it helps prevent split ends from developing as quickly as they normally naturally do. It also helps repair any damaged hair follicles, cleansing the scalp and conditioning our hair and scalp, and that in itself encourages overall hair length and density growth. Kitsch very kindly sent me this wee little self-draining shower caddy, as it were. It's like a self-draining basin, so you don't get all the gunk building up in it. And I've been using little dishes, so this is a real upgrade for me. And I'll show you how easy these things are to lather up. I've often used in the past actually some little bags, like shower bags, to help build up the lather, but in of themselves they're easy to lather up in your hands, and you can either directly lather it into your hair. I lather it into my hands, I find that much easier to control. For the purposes of this video, I've shown you what my hair looks like when I just wash it with normal shampoo. So I went and stopped using this for a time to then show you what my hair looks like when I just use general shampoo, and I'll show you what it looks like after I've washed it with rice water protein shampoo and conditioner. As someone who naturally has a lot of thin, fine hair, I've been going above and beyond over the past couple of years to try and make it grow more healthy and thick. It's incredibly fine naturally, and I find using shampoos like this just help reduce the damage that I'm doing. And each bar is just under $11 each, so that means it's under $21 for both your conditioner and your shampoo, and with 100 washes in it. Kitsch ships in the US, but also to 90 countries internationally, and you can either do a one-off or you can sign up for subscriptions to save money over long term. So if you're interested to try out Kitsch products today, check out my description box down below for my discount code and my link, and get 25% off your order. Thank you, Kitsch, for sponsoring today's video, and now let's get into it. Because yes, I get it, book banning seems to be pretty outdated in a world of the internet, and people are notorious for looking things up online rather than reading about the topics themselves in an actual book. And yes, you are able to look things up on the internet and have access to education that way, provided, you know, something doesn't go horribly wrong, like say the ruler of a global superpower country who is against the rights of people's free access to education and information, offering undisclosed benefits to a group of powerful billionaires who control the vast swathes of the internet, which provides said information. Book banning kind of seems really outdated and sort of low-hanging fruit in the grand scheme of things. And yet, whilst it completely seems old-fashioned to most people, why is it still practiced in the age of the internet if it didn't do anything, if it wasn't more than a symbolic gesture? So does book banning actually still work? Because if it didn't, then why are they still doing it? Even in the day of age when you can go and buy a book from bookshop really easily, secondhand, audiobooks, ebooks, anything. A lot of people have argued that banning books is actually a backfire way of doing so, because people think it creates more drama and intrigue around said books. So in 2023, there was a study that was conducted by professors at Carnegie Mellon University and George Mason University. And this study found that banned books saw a 12% increase in the circulation at libraries that did not have restrictions. But the study doesn't talk about the details of who read these banned books. Are these people with disposable incomes just wishing to feed their curiosity as to why these books have been banned? Or are they people who would never have had access to them otherwise had they been banned and out of reach? Because I think it's really easy for adults, particularly those of us with disposable income, to not see book banning as a huge threat. You know, after all, you can just go buy a copy or order a digital ebook version or audio format. But I think what's important to emphasise here is that most of these book bannings are taking place in certain vulnerable areas. Public libraries, school libraries, and military libraries. The latter two being the most ominous in their not just symbolism, but what they're actually. Because wanting to control what information is consumed by those who work for the government and those who may one day work for the government is where the danger lies. The political intention to make servicemen and women ignorant or unchallenging of the status quo, or not allowing them to have their civil rights to question things and look things up, is deeply offensive, quite frankly, and denying them any access to that information, whatever they would, whilst they are serving your country, seems incredibly disrespectful, quite frankly. And then similarly, denying young minds access to a diverse range of voices, particularly voices which showcase a variety of lifestyles and highlight the atrocities of human nature in different countries, the countries they grew up, anything about the history of the world. It encourages, in one way, an erasure of history by giving them a lack of resources. It's effectively denial of many historical events or realities of the world. If you deny people the reality of the world, you're not setting them up for a future in which they create this perfect utopia which you wish was reality. You put more people in harm's way and you hurt more people. By removing free access to books, one forces curious minds to conform, making them completely unaware of any alternative lives that their parents may preach, their rights as an individual, and the safety and security to explore themselves without fear of retribution. Libraries and access to free books are safe sanctuaries for children who are incredibly vulnerable and may not have safe environments in their school, homes, or state to explore and question what questions they have about themselves or life around them in a private field, without being told off by their parents for asking such questions or straight up being lied to about the reality of the world. Being able to read about your history as a black child, or your queerness or gender nonconformity of people that you've seen on TV or YouTube, let alone your own. Particularly if you're a child who's raised in a household whose parents tell them that they hate those people, and whoever those people may be, whether that be their race, their sexuality, their jobs. There's so many different prejudices, and children aren't allowed to explore that and see what reality is. Or even accessing books which expose children to different religions, cultures and families through literature, which might otherwise conflict with their own, and reveal to that vulnerable child patterns of abuse, neglect and inequality, and encourage that child to seek help from others because they didn't know what they were experiencing wasn't okay for them, because they didn't have the vocabulary or exposure or understanding to an alternative version. For example, in March 2013, the Chicago Public Schools administrators pulled Majane Satrapi's Persepolis, which is this amazing book about recounting her experiences growing up in Iran between the 1970s and I think 1980s. And then in 2014, objections in Oregon and Texas, as well as Illinois, continued, and the details reveal that those parents didn't want their high school students to be assigned a book about Muslims, i.e. the others. And that, I think, really serves the point. If a child grows up in a racist household, which perpetuates the idea that people of different races and cultures are snowflakes who complain about their alleged oppression, and they're drama queens crying about nothing, and they want special privileges, then those children don't have free access to literature which contradicts that perception and proves it false. And then they will go on to grow up and perpetuate those attitudes amongst their peers, and then grow into adults who reinforce those beliefs within systemic hierarchies and put marginalised people intentionally at a disadvantage over and over and over again. And what's worse is the issues that are covered in these banned books are not exclusive to social justice issues. They cover topics such as culture, history, love, grief, health, and things that are being banned for being allegedly sexually explicit are often actually those which are telling children a really important thing about topics that their parents never discuss with them, particularly with teenagers. So a great example of this is 19 Minutes by Jodi Picoult, which is the most banned book in America. And ironically, it is not banned for being about a school shooting. It's banned because there is a single page detailing date rape and using the correct anatomical terminology for it. There is nothing glorifying or pornographic about this scene. However, teenage girls need to know what constitutes rape really early on in life, especially, with all due respect, in a country where 1 in 9 girls are sexually under the age of 18 experience sexual assault or abuse. And it's completely understandable that parents would find having that discussion with their children really uncomfortable. But these discussions need to be had somehow, otherwise these young children grow up to be continued victims by more and more abusers, unable to speak up about what the wrongs are going on to them because they don't understand it's wrong in the first place. They may experience this kind of sexual assault from a very, very young age, and because they are completely blinded to the fact that that's a wrong thing, because all these books that talk about it in a way that's easy for parents to give it to them, in a way that teaches them about it indirectly, then they don't know that's wrong, and they just think they're becoming an adult, and that's how love works, which is so twisted. But books are a really easy way for children to learn so much about history and culture and things that are right and wrong, because with all due respect, children are oftentimes brought up in an environment which is questionable to say the least, and they have no idea otherwise. The children and young people who really need access to these books and these topics most oftentimes only have access to them via their school library, because their parent may not take them to a public library, or they may not even have one in their area. And if a book which speaks to them about issues they haven't got the vocabulary for, whether that's sexual assault, abuse, gender identity, culture, questions they may have about history, their rights, womanhood, a child of colour, a child of immigrants or a disabled child, or even a queer gender non-conforming family, they will be forced to stay silent and continue being subjected to abuse and wrongdoings and not having their questions answered, and have their mental health destroyed from the inside out because they don't have a safe access to peer-reviewed edited literature that has been graded according to age appropriateness. Like, it's not like they're reaching up for random text that they're not reading at a right age. And if they are desperate for answers, that child may feel forced to, with all due respect, enter a much more unsafe and unregulated environment, such as the internet and forums on the internet and social media and Discord, which with all due respect is not catered to their age or background or understanding like literature is in the library, where an adult interjects here, where a librarian works with that child. Let them go wild on the internet, for goodness sake. I'm sure they'll find better answers there. That's more age appropriate and certainly not dangerous at all. Having access to literature which is suited for them is far safer than a desperate child resorting to the wild, wild west of the internet for answers, where they are much more vulnerable. And at the end of the day, book banning violates these child's constitutional rights. They are allowed to learn and read about what they want at their age, but limiting the scope of a child's knowledge robs them of equal representation and robs the young mind of a wealth of human experience. It denies them the truth of reality by trying to force the young mind to only accept this idealed version of what the world should be, what they hope the child will become and fit and form to. Which, with all due respect, as much as you may want that, will never happen. It's never going to happen unless you wipe out 98% of the planet, and even then, I doubt it will ever happen. What's more, it isolates children from each other and learning about each other, learning about the history and the heritage and culture of their classmates, the people that they will always interact with, and then prevents a child from being prepared for comprehending the great injustices of the world they live in, because they can't be sheltered from it, no matter how much people want to keep it safe, because pandemics, wars, horrific accidents, poverty, school shootings, death, and systemic injustice are going to happen to them at any age and at any time. The freedom to learn is a constitutional right, and banning the Diary of Anne Frank from school libraries because you don't want children to know what the Nazis did to the Jews is a few degrees away from complete Holocaust denialism. As someone who read the Diary of Anne Frank when I was very little, I think I was 8 years old, that book stuck with me so much and became part of me in the same way Chinese Cinderella did by Adeline Yen Ma. Oh my goodness, these books were monumental in my understanding of history, and I felt it as a little girl reading about little girl's experience. That was such a moment for me. Why deny that to children? But when you deny children access to literature and a variety and just let them go on the phone, use the internet, but don't let them educate themselves about different experiences and learn about things at their pace and at their time, and particularly about topics that parents and adults may not feel comfortable discussing with, well, children will just be in an environment where they see things happen as they happen. And if that child is in an environment where hate and prejudice are the norm, they'll never see it as hate and prejudice. They'll see it as the norm. Yet in books, if they learn what is hate, what is violence, what is unkindness, what is abuse, then they will see it in real life and challenge and question it, rather than become complicit to a system which will happily take advantage of them from the moment they are born on this planet. And they can stand up for the people around them, whether that's their own family or people in their neighbourhood. So whilst it doesn't seem on a basic level to people like us who are watching the internet and we're adults and we know how to navigate these spaces that book banning is anything but a symbolic gesture that doesn't do anything because you can just go buy the book, the people who are going to be damaged are the people who don't have that access, who don't have the liberty of buying a book for themselves. They're people who are in systems which are enforcing ideas onto them within a confines and not allowing them to express themselves in their free time, not allowing them to engage their curiosity and isolating them and limiting their access. There are people with non-disposable incomes. There are people who are on the streets, who are young children, and young vulnerable minds, who are in the military. But the people I worry the most about are children who don't have disposable income, children who have only the library to look at, and they are forced to only read certain books that their parents or school districts or presidents will tell them to read. And that will shape America. Because you either have a child who reads the books in the library or a child that goes onto the internet for answers. And quite frankly, I'd rather trust the library. Because have you seen the internet recently? It's really messy. I don't think children should be on there. I don't want to be on there. I don't have social media anymore because I don't want to be on there. But yes, that's my discussion on why I think book bannings still work. In fact, I think they're almost slightly more insidious now, because it gives the illusion of having a freedom of knowledge. It gives the illusion that you can still learn on your own ways, when in reality the most vulnerable people are the ones that are being denied it. And also for yourselves, because even if you're someone who goes, well, I can just buy the book, why are you allowing yourself to be forced into spending your money, particularly if you don't have much of it, disposable income, to read about topics that you want to, when, again, your constitutional right is to have access to that book, whether the President of the United States likes it or not, or whether some random mother in Texas doesn't want it to be available in the library because she doesn't want her Jimmy reading it. Like, why is she dictating what you should be reading, and why is she making you then spend your hard-earned money on a book that you just want to read for curiosity's sake? Quite frankly, that sounds ridiculous, because it is. It's forcing people into either turning to their own finances to support their education, or forcing people to not read about it at all. And I don't think that's okay. Even in a world with the internet, I still don't think that's an okay thing to do. And as such, I don't think we should be so complacent about, well, what's the point of that? Just go buy the book. So yes, I hope you enjoyed this more chatty video. I hope you don't mind. This is kind of more of a pivot. If you like it, please consider liking and subscribing, leaving a wee comment down below. Thank you very much for having the patience and being kind and understanding about people with conditions such as this, stuttering and cluttering. It's both hit me sometimes, but cluttering is my weakness. But thank you ever so much for being understanding and kind, and I hope you are happy and healthy. And remember, books save lives, so keep reading.